Welcome to another episode of Modern Latina in Midlife. I have such a special episode for you today. I think it's special because this is the type of conversation that just lights me up. We are talking about thriving in your career as a woman in the midlife stage. Most importantly, making career changes in this age of life. I know many times when I speak to women, my cousins and close friends included, they just really feel stuck and like they can't make a change anymore at this stage in life because the pension is so good, or they're basically wearing their golden handcuffs, and it's really hard to see that. So today's conversation is really, really empowering and just really offers some really great nuggets of wisdom and inspiration for women in our age group in midlife who maybe are feeling stuck in their careers, or they feel like it's passionless and it doesn't fill their cup anymore. Maybe you're getting the Sunday scaries every single Sunday evening. You're dreading Monday because you have to go to work or whatever it is. You're tired of the commute. You don't feel like you're getting paid enough. This conversation is for you. And if you know somebody in this situation, forward this episode to them. Do them a favor. It just really is empowering and just really full of inspiration. I brought on Carrie today, Carrie Peralta. She's the founder and head coach of Peak State Coaching. And we dive deep into the journey of changing careers in midlife. We talked about signs of that you might need a career change. What are some of those signs, challenges in making this transition in your 40s and your 50s? It's not easy, but it definitely is not impossible. Carrie and I are prime examples of that. We talk about cultural and societal pressures as well, especially as Latinas and immigrants. We talked about reigniting your career passion. If you are in a career that is in alignment with your soul's purpose, then how do you reignite that again? We talked about personal branding. We talked about avoiding burnout and what are some signs that you may be feeling, burnout in your career. We talked about a great, great, great conversation, salary negotiation tips. You want to listen to this. We talked about networking and how to get unstuck in your current roles and how to start something that feels more in alignment with your soul, whether it's as a side gig, as a passion project, or really replacing your 9 to 5. So it really is a really great conversation to help you take control of your career path, redefine your success on your own terms, and navigate midlife career changes with confidence. You don't want to miss this one. Let me go ahead and introduce you to Carrie Peralta. With 2 decades of experience as a technical recruiter, leader, and DEI champion at industry titans like Verizon, Google, and Netflix, Carrie has embarked on a new adventure as the founder and head coach of Peak State Coaching. Her mission is to empower women and underrepresented individuals to shine in their tech careers. As a proud Latina, Carrie brings her unique insights to the table, helping her clients define their vision, boost their confidence, shift their mindset, and truly embrace their strengths. When she's not championing equity and inclusion, Carrie is navigating the highs and lows of raising an emerging teen and balancing the joys of marriage. She wears many hats, all while remembering the importance of self-reflection and the power of choice. Welcome to the podcast, Carrie Peralta. I hope you enjoy this conversation. I know I sure did.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for
Awesome.
having
Well,
me.
I've been really looking forward to having this conversation. And honestly, I've been thinking about having somebody like you with your expertise to come on and talk to our audience about potential career changes, especially as we get older in age and we kind of start to feel like we're stuck where we're at. So
Mm,
I was super happy to find you and to see that you were available to come on and join us. So excited.
Thank you. Yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah. So let's start with first, what inspired you to transition from technical recruitment to career coaching, particularly for midlife professionals?
Oh, this is such a great question because I too, even as a coach, went through a midlife career crisis, is what I've been calling it now. So I experienced a tech layoff, as many people have in the industry. And I had a real like come to Jesus moment with myself where I had to dig really deep and think, oh my gosh, I had to do a lot of unpacking of my identity, which was really tied around my job, my title, earnings, all those things, and really figure out, is this who I want to be? Is this who I want to keep being? And I really came down to um, understanding that like I had the power to choose what was next for me. I didn't like go have to go get another job and be in the corporate grind. And it's, for some people and it's not for everybody, but for me, what I did through a lot of like self-reflection and doing a lot of like shadow work, if we can be really honest, is figuring out that I am meant to serve others through coaching connection. Those are my core strengths, the things that are like my zone of genius or excellence, if you will. And I was always able to do that as a recruiter, matching really, really talented people with amazing jobs that they loved. But I also wanted to do it on my own, like for me, in my style and my methodology. So that's what I started doing just about, 18 months ago, not that long ago. And it's been so, so rewarding. I'm so glad I did it. And just to watch people really transform, really feel empowered, and really kind of come into themselves has been just like the icing on the cake.
I love that. That is really, really beautiful. I can feel that love for what you do. I can feel that energy coming through. So I
Oh,
love
thank
that
you.
for you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I've been coaching for about 18 months as well. So similarly.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers to you. So how do you help clients or people identify when it's time for a career change or a reinvention, or at what point, maybe this is two different questions, but at what point do people seek you out, or do they know that there is another way? It's like, I would imagine if I were still in corporate that I might feel like, man, I'm kind of stuck here. Like, I wouldn't even know
Hmm.
to go look for you. So if you can kind of help
Yeah.
me out with some of that.
Yeah, I think, a lot of my clients come from current clients, right? So they refer people because they know friends that are going through something similar, where they feel burnt out. Maybe they've been in career for quite some time. Sometimes they feel like they hit a ceiling. And then other times they're like, I just want to dial this back. Like, I don't like, for example, some people like to or choose to go from a leadership role to an individual contributor. Like, you know what? I just kind of want to work on my own stuff. So I would say that if energetically you are not looking forward to going to work on Sunday night, that is probably the number one indicator, is just to listen to your body. Because
Yeah.
if you are feeling like, oh my gosh, how do I avoid going to work? I have to, and you just start getting the ick, right? And
Yeah.
your energy is just shifted in your gut. You start to feel things in your body,
Mhm.
right? Where you're just like not looking forward to it. Maybe you're feeling avoidant. All those types of things, right? I would say listen to your body. So like you just do a gut check with yourself. There's a reason that saying is like, oh, what does your gut say? There's a lot of truth to that.
Mhm.
So if you're feeling kind of resistant, avoidant, not looking forward to it, or even if you're in the other client that I work with a lot is the ones that are just super in the thick of it and can't even think about what to do next because they're on the verge of like overwhelm and burnout. They've got
Mhm.
so much on their plate and they usually are last on that plate. it's
Yeah.
it's just work and all the different hats that we wear as parents, as
Mhm.
partners, as sisters, as moms, all those things, right? And so I think just listening to yourself and just doing a little bit of a gut check, like, how
Mhm.
am I feeling about this right now?
Mhm.
And the other thing too is you don't have to boil the ocean and get it all figured out with your one question of asking yourself,
Mhm.
just checking in with yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's where it all comes from, right? How are you feeling? It's all where it's where
Hmm.
all the questions or the answers are at, is about anything or everything, right? If you have that inkling of, is this where I'm supposed to be? It's probably a no. Or
Yeah.
something
Yeah. If
needs
you
to
have
be
any doubts.
tweaked, right? Or something needs to be
Hmm.
tweaked, because if you have to ask that question, something is amiss. So,
Something I share with my clients is a lot of times we already know the answers. I think you're kind of alluding to that, which is like you already know what you've got, right? So we just have to kind of pause and take stock of that. And I tell people, I'm not showing you anything magical at all. This is already all in you. I'm just kind of like the person that just pulls the curtain back a little bit so that you can ask yourself these questions. Most of the time, you already have it in there. You just have to
Mhm.
uncover
Yeah,
it.
100%. Yeah, I agree. So, as Latinas, often we are faced with additional cultural and societal pressures. In your experience,
Mm.
what are some of those unique challenges that Latinas encounter during career transitions, and how do you support them in navigating these pressures while still achieving their career goals?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? That's such a good layered
Right.
question. Okay, first of all, let's just hold space and acknowledge that I think growing up Latina is that some of those constructs you grow up with are things like get a good job, work really hard, keep your head down, don't make waves. You're kind of just lucky to be there. So just do your job and don't ask too many questions, those types of things, right? So I think if you were raised in a culture like that, and I'm not saying everybody is, but I think it's really common, right? And then I would say the second piece of that is comp conversations. Same thing with money, where it's like, oh, just take the job offer, it's going to be good. At least you have benefits and you have a job and all those things.
Mhm.
But that we have a lot of power still to choose and just really owning and leaning into that, which is this what you really want? Do
Mhm.
you want to be here? And what do you want to do once you're there, right? And being able to really maximize on those opportunities. And
Mhm.
same thing with paid discussions, is you can still advocate for yourself. Because I always tell people the very worst thing that can happen is they just say no.
Mhm.
But at
Mhm.
least you ask. So just flexing that muscle of self advocacy is huge, 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 huge. And it's just
Yes.
taking that first step. So I don't know if that answers that question because I know there's a
Yeah,
lot of layers in that. That was a good
there's a
question.
lot of layers. So that's why I was thinking about it. I'm like going, well, we this can, phew, we could be here
It'll
for
be a whole
hours.
episode.
But, do you think that as you were saying that, I started to think, do you think that this whole concept of that what we hear, well, what I heard from my parents is don't make waves, be happy with what you have, don't ask too many questions, keep your head down. Do
Yep.
you think my parents were immigrants? Do you think that that comes from that immigrant mindset of, okay, I'm like maybe not supposed to be here either, so let's just kind of pacify everybody and just make everybody happy? Do you think that that's kind of where that comes from?
Yeah. I think it's kind of like, yeah, absolutely. I do. I agree with that. I think it's kind of just staying low on the radar, right? You don't want to make any
Mhm.
blips. You don't want to make too many waves or sounds.
Mhm.
But we all know that like each one of us is really different. We bring different strengths to the table. And some of us are just not like that. Some people are really like
Mhm.
more outward, more outspoken, have ideas,
Mhm.
want to be heard. And then other people too don't always have that voice. Like sometimes they're like introverted, right? Or maybe they're neurodivergent and they're just not going to be that outward. So I think even for people like that, it's even more challenging because you're growing up with that cultural, and then maybe just innately that's just not who you are,
Else
right?
like
So
that. Mhm.
you have to make really conscious efforts to kind of lean into like owning your career path and deciding. And again, it goes back to that power choice, is deciding what it is that you want to raise up, right? Whether it's like a new process, or maybe you have an idea, or maybe you want to join maybe a group for a project, or maybe where you need support because we're not always the best at asking for help either.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. So what would you say, like most of my listeners, I believe, and really why I started the podcast is because as a 40 something and now 50 something year old, I see a lot of my friends and clients and, cousins and stuff talking about not being able to move or make changes at this age any longer. What are the biggest challenges that you see people in their 40s and 50s go through when it comes to changing their careers?
First, I'm going to say, hell no, that is not true. And here's why: because you and I are standing right here because we decided to make a pivot and a change
Mhm.
in our mature end of the 40s, maybe
Yes.
even 50s, right? So you absolutely can do it. But I do want to acknowledge it's scary. It's scary. The unknown is scary and change is scary. Those two things are huge. It could be sometimes debilitating for people, but it also can be your superpower, which is like it was for me, like having my job kind of pulled out from under me, where I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Like it really spurred that question for me. I had to dig really deep, where it's like, well, I can get more of the same, or I can change even though I'm later in my career. But it's so true. People do face things like, the fear of ageism, where it's like, hey, Will they see me? They're going to think I'm too old. But here's the thing: you have so many things that you bring to the table. Even if you're changing industry, changing companies, changing jobs, even if you're just changing departments at a job you've been at for a long time, you still have a lot of really amazing skills and unique strengths and abilities and capabilities that you
Mhm.
can still grow and foster and hone, like, really honing that craft that you bring to that particular role. And that just makes you even more qualified. So I would say, just you thinking, oh, I'm older, I've been doing kind of the same thing for a long time, you still have a lot of rich experience that you can bring and offer to new roles and perspective, right? That sometimes like the younger people just don't have. They just don't have that same experience. So it's also looking at it in a way of like, how can I transfer these skills? Even if you change industries, you still have transferable skills. And so that's something I work on a lot with my coaching clients, is we go through like your brag book of accomplishments, where we
Mhm.
really showcase and highlight the work that you are most proud of. Because when I say not your best work, not the most, the sexiest one, like the one with the best metrics or results, but the work you're most proud of will energetically start to give you a spark. You're like, oh, I totally know exactly that example or that thing, right? And you start to perk up, and people can tell when you're passionate about talking about something that you're really proud of.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's that thing that sparks that passion inside, that thing that makes you kind of perk up, to like,
Yeah.
and you can talk about it forever and you have so much fun doing it and time passes by so fast and you're like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And where did time go? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
100% love that. So, but speaking to that a little bit more, I mean, what about the people that say are like teachers, or work for the government? They have the golden handcuffs, and they're like, yeah, I just
Mm.
can't leave. Like, I mean, I know people who can't even leave their area. It's like I could never move away. Like, I don't like living in the state anymore, but I could never move away because, I'm tied to my teaching job, all the benefits and the perks. Like, how do you work with people like that?
Yeah, I would say, if because I get that, like some people can't move for family reasons. Maybe you've got like an amazing pension. I'm super jealous because those are so hard to find nowadays.
Yeah.
And maybe it's like just geography. I do hear that a lot, especially in the tech industry. It's like not everybody wants to go live in the Silicon Valley where it's super duper expensive and you have to be away from, potentially where your family lives. I would say think about some other things that you may want to do that are going to like satisfy that need, satisfy that craving for something a little bit different. So a lot of people have like passion projects that they do, they volunteer, or even there's like the gig economy where maybe you have side hustles. So it's like finding that thing for you. And I would say like even starting with something as simple as mentorship. I feel like it's so underrated, right? So there are people that could really use your nuggets of wisdom, especially if you're in your 40s and 50s. You have a lot to share with people that are just coming up, like emerging talent. And a lot of times you get so much gratification in just showing others what's possible, right? So you may not have to leave your job. You can find it like in other ways, like
Mhm.
side hustles, projects, mentorship. And then also, we haven't talked about this yet, but I think it's kind of related, which is really finding your tribe is so important too, is like meaningful connections, just like you and I, even just doing this today. We'll probably be forever friends, and I'll keep listening to your podcast that I have. But those meaningful connections, you just never know with the people that are in your circle when they talk about projects that come up, when they talk about opportunities, or maybe you don't have to move. Maybe it's something you just do part time. Maybe it's something that's freelance. Or maybe it's just like a collaboration that really kind of feeds you and speaks to you. So I think the power of people, mentorship, and your circle of influence is a circle. It really goes kind of both ways, and you get so much out of it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that it is so powerful to know people. You never know where
Oh
an
yeah.
opportunity is going to come from. I mean, I've had people contact me years after we've met, years later, and it's like, wow. Or somebody referred me to somebody, and it's like, wow,
Hmm.
that's amazing. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love finding a good tribe, and I love what you said because, I always say your mess becomes your message. So what
Oh
you
yeah.
went through, somebody else needs that. So it's almost like thinking
Hmm.
about that person you were 2 years, 5 years, 10 years ago. What does that person need? Because you know how to get from A to Z. You already did
Hmm.
that. And there's somebody out there that hasn't gone, doesn't have the answers yet. Like somebody. in our age would, you know?
Right. No, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah. So I have like clients that are kind of more emerging, um, talent, and they're just kind of finding their footing in their careers. And then I have all the way up to like, executives, right? And it's interesting because they think it's about like, well, I just want the better job or like the more experience. And it's like the person who's really senior and has been doing this for a long time is like, well, I really want to make sure I'm feeding myself, like feeding my soul, right? So it's like it's never, I guess the grass is greener on the other side. It's like we all are gonna have our challenges, and they're all like seasons of our life, phases of our life. And it's going to be what I love is like seeing them look back like,
Mhm.
oh, do you remember when you first started? Like, oh yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm like, see, but you'll get here. You just like give it time, just invest
Yeah.
in yourself in this way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so cool. How can, for people who are in their careers and they've kind of just lost their spark, how do you work with somebody who wants to reignite, their passion for their current careers? Is that something that you encounter?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I think I kind of always go back to like finding your why, right? And just you kind of reverse engineer. It's like, well, why did you get into this to begin with? Why do you want to keep doing it now? Or why do you maybe want to make a change? And those whys can be really powerful, especially when you're facing a lot of walls like rejection. It starts to help you build resilience as your why. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's something that you're truly passionate about, but maybe you want to make some slight tweaks and pivots, right? So just doing again some of that deep self-reflective work of getting a little more clarity around why they're doing it, right? And then sometimes people find they don't want to do it anymore and they need to make a change. And then
Mhm.
sometimes they're like, nope, I think I want to do this because I've got kind of like the long game in mind, which might be the folks that are like, hey, I'm actually getting kind of close to retirement. So maybe this is something that like I start to dabble in something else, or maybe seeing how I can make this like a strategic advantage exactly where I'm at. So I think finding your why is really important,
Mhm.
just to really kind of do some of that self discovery because your why can change. Like if you think about maybe your why 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, is very different, very
Right.
different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you find that for us at our age, maybe at any age, but especially for us in midlife, do you find that it's important to build a personal brand, even if you work for somebody else, or in corporate? Because I know it's important when we're working for ourselves, but if for
Mhm.
somebody who's working for corporate for somebody else, do you think that that is important to build a personal brand?
I do, and I it's so funny because I used to teach this course a lot at work. I would do it like monthly as like your personal brand, and people have like a really challenging time, myself included, where that line gets really fuzzy between your professional brand and your personal brand. And I'll tell you right now, your personal brand will always win because that's who you are, right? So really understand like what your strengths are, what your values are, and do those things align. And that's where things start to get fuzzy sometimes at different phases of your life, where it's like, if they're not in alignment, they probably won't work. Energetically, you're going to feel like you're butting up against walls. It doesn't feel right. You're not looking forward to it. And other times it will be in flow. And that's when it's really gorgeous, right? Where it's like those values, the things that you're doing, your strengths are being utilized, you're being stretched with your thinking, maybe with projects or work, right? So I think personal brand is super important. The other thing about really like knowing and leaning into your personal brand and really figuring out what it is, like your core strengths, your core values, some of that why, and how you can align that with your personal life and work, probably in that order. You're going to start to notice that you will start to attract people that are very like minded, that
Mhm.
probably have pretty similar values, right? And that's a really beautiful thing. But even knowing your personal values and that what that brand is really going to help propel you for like when you have to put like a summary about yourself on your LinkedIn, when you're in your performance review conversations and career conversations, right? Because you can start to take some of these elements of your personal brand and distill them down to really who you are in a couple sentences. Of course, that's not going to be super robust, but just having that knowingness and really owning it and leaning into it is just such a beautiful place to be because sometimes that can be kind of your North Star, your guiding light of like, God, this
Mhm.
is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to do about it to keep me in alignment with these things
Mhm.
that I hold true to be for myself. That's your personal brand.
Yeah. I love that. I love the idea of like maybe writing down your vision and your own, your personal vision and mission and
Hmm.
core values, and then always using those, as you mentioned, as your North Star. Like, okay, does this opportunity align with this? Does this promotion align with this? Because then you can make sure that you're staying true to yourself, true to your
Hmm.
passions. Yeah, I
And
love
then the
that.
other thing is to revisit it too, because like you can do this work, but like we just chatted about it a second ago, is like they can change. So it's not a one and done. I'd say like probably revisit it even yearly if you can. Maybe even at the start of the new year, just revisit like what's my personal brand been? What do I want it to be? And then who do I need to become to be that? Right.
Mhm. Who do I need to become? I love that. So
Yeah.
you're striving for something, it's like, who do I need to become to do that? I love
Hmm.
that.
Yep.
And as far as people reaching burnout, I mean, you hear this word a
Mm.
lot nowadays. And I think back when I was younger, I didn't really hear about burnout, but boy, I was living it.
Same for me. I don't remember that it being like so normalized in the way we talk about it now. Like I feel like it's really out there now, and I'm glad there's more resources. But I feel you. I feel like I was in the thick of it, and I didn't even know what to call
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you share, do you have any strategies that you can share that, for people who are listening that they can use, like practical tips they could use to combat burnout in a demanding career or demanding business?
Hmm. Yeah, there's probably a couple of things, but I would say like, the best strategy that I've seen really work is to just double down on yourself and to double down on your health, because just do a gut check. I'm telling you, think about like, how are you sleeping? What are you eating? When's the last time you moved your body? And we're all guilty of it. Trust me, I don't have this down. I have to like make a concerted effort at these things every day. And it's not to add to your plate, it's really to give yourself that space to nurture your physical body and your physiology, because it's super important. Because if you're not sleeping a lot because you're up working late after you put your kids to bed and you're checking emails and you're doing all the things, you're like, how am I going to get a workout in? How am I going to take a nap? I can't even tell you, girl, how many times I had to like hide in my car just to read my phone
Hmm.
or lock myself in the bathroom just to like have
Hmm.
some peace and quiet with little fingers underneath the door. I know you're in there. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. But for 5 minutes, this is my time.
Oh, I hear you, girl. I
Yeah.
mean, my kids are grown now,
um,
but I
but
remember
remember
those
those
days.
days. But now it's different demands. Right now, they need to be like, driven around everywhere and all those things. So I would say double down on yourself, and your health. Even if it's just really small, it doesn't have to be crazy. Like, oh, I went and did CrossFit for an hour, then I went to a day spa. People like associate those types of things with like some of the self care aspects, but it can even be just taking a few moments for yourself. Even something as small as like making your own plate first at dinner time. Because how many times have we served dinner where the last ones to sit down at the table, the last ones to eat? Everybody's already done because we're always taking care of all these other people.
Wow.
So doubling down on yourself, I would say is beautiful. And it can be really small, really small. The other day, this is my win for the week. I'm just gonna put it out there.
Yes,
I've been
please do.
working.
I love this. I should start
um,
asking everybody to share their win for the week. I love that.
Oh, I love that. Let's do it. Let's do it together.
Yes, yes.
I just launched group coaching, which I've been working for, several weeks trying to get everything in order. And like, of course, you just never feel prepared enough or done, right? And I've been working a lot of hours. And I just told my family, I'm going to take a power nap. And I was so excited. I was so excited. I put like my timer on my phone and I'm like, nobody talk to me. Just leave me alone. And they get it, right? Where it's like, it's just something really small where it's like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm just going to go take a little power nap. And it feels so gratifying. You're like, oh my gosh, this is like my sacred space. But it can even be something like taking a walk. I have one client where she's working like 12-hour days. She's commuting like 2 hours. And she's like, I don't even know that I like went to the bathroom today, or I've definitely not had enough water. And I was like, look, 5 minutes, walk away from your desk in your workspace, go in your car if you need to. That's your 5 minutes. Do whatever you want. Listen to some music, listen to a podcast, do a meditation, drink your water, eat your lunch. This is your 5 minutes, right? So it's just I think it's just really starting small.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast episode yesterday, and it's this really famous doctor. Of course, I can't remember her name. Oh, Dr. Gabrielle Leon, I think. She's like
Oh, okay.
the muscle queen. She talks about building muscle. And so she was
Okay.
talking about how if we don't schedule it on our calendar, even if it's 10, 20 minutes, he goes, most likely it's not going to happen. So like
Yep.
start with scheduling yourself and schedule everything else around that. And I was like, oh, I love that.
Isn't that brilliant? I have a coach, like a business coach myself, and she calls it scheduling your joy. And I'm like, oh, I know I have to do this. And it's like, why am I so resistant? Because
Ooh,
I always feel
I
like I
love
have a
that.
thousand things to do. She's like, nope, you
Yeah.
pre-schedule your joy. Because if you don't, you will not get to it.
Yeah,
So
you won't.
she schedules everything. But
I love that.
it's such a good practice. And same
It
thing when it comes to your career, like revisiting your brag book and like what accomplishments can you add? What reflections can you like kind of glean from the months, like how you've done, right? Because you got to show those receipts eventually when it comes to your
mm-hmm.
career, doing performance, promotion.
Oh
Same thing.
yes.
I say put it on your calendar. If once a month is too frequent and you can't squeeze it in,
Mhm.
at least once a quarter, do that for
Oh
yourself.
yeah.
Same thing I think with scheduling our joy.
Yes. Oh yeah. When I was in corporate, I was in marketing. After every single project, program, campaign, whatever, I would like take time off for myself and write down what the outcome was, what like my thing in it was, so that and I would keep it in a Word doc with all the things. So when like
Perfect.
time came to like talk to the boss, well, it was like ready and fresh in my mind in that moment, you know. So
Yep.
it's like it was all ready with
Oh,
my list, and it was yeah. That was I remember doing
that's so smart. So smart. I'm telling you, it is a living document. Keep it up
that.
because it's not just for when you're looking for a job or changing jobs.
No,
Those are your receipts that you're going to show evidence of success.
and
And then
yourself.
even if you have,
And
yeah, and
show
then
yourself
even if it
evidence.
didn't go so well, like that's okay too, because you're going to be okay to talk about. Here's what went really well. Here's what I nailed. Here's what I learned that didn't go so well, but here's what I bring to my next project or my next thing that I now know more because of that learning. And you just fail fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah. It's kind of the lessons, right? The you always
Mm-hmm.
learn something from everything. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this didn't go well. What did I learn and what would I do differently next time? Yeah, I love that. What advice would you have for someone who is feeling stuck right now in their career and unsure what their next step should be? I mean, maybe you already touched on this, but if you can give us any tips that our listeners can do to kind of get
Yeah.
them over that stuck hump.
Mm-hmm. Um, I'm gonna say it's decide. And this is where that power of choice, again, it's powerful. You're gonna decide, you're gonna either decide on yourself or you're gonna decide on that stuck. So you have to choose your heart, right? And it's
Mhm.
like, hey, because this is what happens when I talk to people and they don't end up doing anything for themselves. Because I always tell them, like, hey, even if you're not coaching me, get somebody, get some help,
Mhm.
get some support. You're not alone, right? And then sure enough, 6 months later, like, I'm still blah, 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 blah. Because they made that decision. It's like, and it's not to like shame you, make you feel bad. We all do it. We have to make all these decisions and micro decisions every day, right? And how we're like taking care of ourselves, our career, and all the things. But it's just deciding on you just for a moment and then keeping yourself honest, like kind of holding yourself to task, which is like, what's one thing I can do today to help me move closer to that desired life or career or whatever it is that you want? What's just one thing I can do today? Maybe it's that nap. Maybe
Mhm.
it's putting your own plate together at dinner today, right? Or
Mhm.
maybe it's making that phone call to an old connection because you're like, hey, we haven't chatted in a while. I'd love to catch up.
Mhm.
That's your network.
Mhm.
That's a meaningful connection, right? But what's that
Absolutely.
one thing that you can do today to move closer to the life or career that you want to live?
Mhm.
And just deciding on yourself. I'm telling you, please decide on yourself. You're so worth it. You're
Mhm.
so worth it. Because here's the risk. Here's the risk if you don't. If you don't do anything now, nothing's probably going to change. It's very likely, unless you're just super duper lucky and something
Right.
something
Something
big
falls in your
shifts for
lap.
you, right? Something
Yeah.
falls in your lap, it's probably not going to change. And
Yeah.
then you'll start feeling guilt and regret. Oh, I should. It's okay. Your should have is today. You can decide right
Mhm.
now today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because otherwise you'll be here a year from now still feeling stuck and wondering instead of just having decided on something and just like, let me just
Hmm.
try this. Let me just go for this. Or let me just Google something. Like, I don't know what to do, but let me see what's out there. Let me talk to people. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it
Wonder.
really is progress, not perfection, right? It's just making those little I call it just 1% better. It's like, I just have to be 1% better than I was yesterday, or 1% closer to like what it is that I want to achieve versus yesterday. And it's in those decisions that you're like really deciding on yourself, right? You're choosing yourself, you're choosing what's best for you. Because if you don't, you probably will be kind of just stuck where you were. Even if you're totally overwhelmed, it's just, just checking in with yourself and just doing those small incremental shifts. I'm telling you, when you start to stack and stack and stack, you're going to look back like, oh my gosh, I did that. And that's when I would say, please celebrate your wins, even the small ones. Just be like, hey, I did that. That's awesome. Just for today, not a big deal, but I did that for myself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the golden ratio, right? Like you only take 1% shift, but it starts stacking up. It's like the Fibonacci, or what's it called? That swirl. It's like it only shifts just ever
Oh,
so slightly every step. But when you see how it evolves over time, it creates this huge, big change. So yeah, it's kind of
I
like,
love that visual.
hmm, yeah. How do you guide clients through salary negotiations and compensation conversations?
Yes, this is the juicy
That's
question.
right.
Yes, this is our
Show me the
spicy
money,
question of the
baby.
day. That's right. That's right. Okay, so I'm glad you asked this because I actually have a free download. So if you go to my website, it's called Confident Comp Conversations. There's a lot of C's in there, but it's like tips to getting the compensation you deserve. So I'll give you the link to this. It's a
Perfect.
PDF and it's got some fillable portions in it. But I would say number one is understanding what it is that you want. What is it you're trying to get? Are you trying to get a pay raise? Are you trying to figure out what your compensation should be for your next job? Are you trying to figure out like, hey, am I at marketable pay? Am I equitable with my peers? Am I equitable for the role in my area? Right. So there's a lot of factors. And so I'd say is lean into doing some data and research. There's a lot of really good reputable websites out there, some not so much. So I would say be really careful. And I give you a lot of those the links to reputable sites I think are pretty credible in the data that they share, and doing some market research data for pay, what the market pay practices are. Because there's a few things to consider. What's the role? Every company titles roles differently. They're not always exactly the same. A program manager might be a project manager, a product manager might be something else. So just being, weary that it's like, hey, some of these are not always like for like, but you find the closest match. Then you have to consider like the location of the role. And then you start to find some of those pay ranges, right? Based on your experience, level of education, all of these things. So there's a lot of power in doing your research and pulling some data. Because I think, any good recruiter, any good boss or manager is going to say, well, where are you getting that number from? And you can say, oh, I've done my research. I've done some due diligence. I've asked around. I looked at what like our compensation plan looks like, right? So making sure you know your objective. And then when you collect that data, really kind of, taking a look at yourself and knowing your floor and knowing your ceiling, which is like, all right, here's where I'm at right now. This is the kind of the minimum of what I want to take for my next role. Or if you're asking for a promotion or a pay raise, what you're willing to accept and why, because everybody has different motivating factors when it comes to compensation. For some people, it's purely about the cash, like the base salary. For others, it's bonus. For others, it's like, I'm not so worried about base salary, but if they have stock options, stock is what I want because I'm thinking more long term, right? Because maybe you've got like two income earners in your home and you're feeling pretty safe or pretty comfortable where you're at. But so maybe that more long term investment is important for you. For some people, it's not even the compensation, it's the benefits. Like what benefits are included. And these are things like 100% paid benefits, depending on the size of the family. Maybe it doesn't matter if you have one kid or five kids. I know there's some companies where they have a threshold. Two kids is the same as 10 kids. Maybe that's important because you've got a big family, right? For others, it might be work location where it's like, hey, I really need to be remote because being here, this is where I need to be and I can't move to that location, right? Or maybe it's hybrid flexibility because you've got other demands and you just need that flexibility. So sometimes it's going to be location, time, hours, flexibility of the role. For some, it can be career path, all kinds of different things, right? So I would say having that really clear objective, doing your research to understand what the market pay practices are. And one little pin on that one is it's not always about cost of living, it's cost of labor. And there's a difference. So, cost of living, you might think, oh, well, I'm in Los Angeles, or I'm in New York, or I'm in Seattle, high cost of living, right? But employers are oftentimes gauging and using salary data based on cost of labor. How much does it cost for us to pay a person doing that thing in that city? And
Mm.
it isn't always quite the same, right? So
Mm.
just knowing like
Interesting.
what the cost of labor is for that particular role in that location. That's why I said pull some data, and I referenced here, I'll give you a few. One of them is like
Thank you.
salary.com, yeah, or hired.com/salary calculator.
Mm.
Another good website, excuse me, is Salary Transparent Street. Yeah, these
Interesting.
are a few good ones because you can go to Reddit or you can go to Glassdoor, but just remember, like, not everybody's always going to write the best things on like these
Yeah.
particular websites. So take it with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is people tend to embellish, but some of these websites are pretty credible where they're pulling employer given data, where the employers are submitting data in big
Mhm.
batches so they can kind of
Mhm.
just get some market pay practices. So that's what I would say is like doing your research, checking out some credible resources, and remember, not everything is gospel, right? So staying really flexible, which is like, hey, these are rough estimates or ranges that you can start to work with as you start to zero in on the compensation that's ideal for you and what factors are the most important for you. Like we were saying, maybe it's location or the format of the team, the hours, those types of things. And then just really knowing and believing when you go into that conversation with a lot of confidence because you've done some practice. It's just like
Mhm.
interviewing. It's like having some practice with a mentor, with a coach, with a trusted colleague or a friend,
Mhm.
that you can just say, hey, I want to just kind of like set up this conversation, do some mock,
Mhm.
conversations of what this salary ask is going to be, especially when you're at the kind of bargaining table when it comes to your job offer. Because that job offer, if you're not feeling energetically really good about it, you're not getting everything that you need. Maybe there are some levers that you and the company can pull to make some adjustments where it's like, hey, we hear what you're saying. We're willing to make this hybrid for you. You can commit to coming in a couple of days a week if that's one of the most important factors for you. That's where we can flex for you, right? So there are a lot of things that are negotiable. I think that people don't always realize, and then just getting practice with that conversation so that you go in with a lot of confidence. You're ready to go. You've got your data. You know what your clear objective is. You know what the floor is of what you'll accept, and you know what the ceiling is. And I always tell you, start with your ceiling. Please, please, please swing for the fences because you can always go down. You can never go. It's really hard to walk it back when you're like, oh, I want 100K. And then you're like, just kidding, can I get 150? They're gonna be like, nope, cat's out of the bag. You already said that number. That's what I wrote down, and that's what they're leaving on. So swing for the fences. The worst they can tell you is no, but at least you'll be able to come back down just a little bit if you need to because you know your floor and your ceiling. So yeah, I've got these tips to getting the compensation you deserve with confident comp conversations. It's a free PDF. I'd love to share it with the
That is
listeners.
so awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll link that. What any other final words of advice or anything that you want to share that you want to tell people? Please go ahead and do that.
Gosh, I would just, my life's work is to get more like representation, more Latinas into the careers that they want and love and can thrive in. But I would say it always starts with you. You're pretty effing amazing. So please take time to just get to know yourself, get to know where your strengths lie, what your superpowers are, and know and own them like your career depends on it because it does. No one's
Mhm.
going to advocate for you but you. Somebody
Mhm.
might believe in you. Somebody might be a really good ally, a good friend, even a good mentor. But you've got to be your first advocate. It starts with you, and you can totally do it. You can absolutely do it. It just takes these small shifts, right? And then just getting support, finding your tribe, finding your people. A lot of times when we get so busy, we isolate because you just feel like you can't, add any more to your plate. But if you look at it this way, they're not really adding to your plate. If anything, they're kind of nurturing parts of your life. And people are always, kind of put in your life or in your path for a reason. Yeah. So I would say
Mhm.
start with you.
So good. Yes. Thank you. Carrie, where can people find you? Share what are you doing? You mentioned your coaching program. Please share with us all the things.
Yeah, we're kicking off group coaching next week. It's going to be open enrollment continuously. So even if you hear this podcast 2, 3 months from now, we're still going to be rolling. You can totally drop in. But, group coaching is really, touching on all these elements that I talked with you about today. And, I would say just helping people just uncover that inner knowing because we sit in a lot of doing, right? Not in less of the being and the knowing
Mhm.
space.
Mhm.
And that's a really special place to be. And that's your peak state. That's where I inspired the name for my business, which is Peak
Mhm.
State Coaching.
Mhm.
So we do a lot of these things. It's just really uncovering those skills, those strengths, those capabilities, how you can show up authentically with a lot of confidence because you have that inner knowing, like, yeah, that is exactly who I am. This is what I bring to the table in these career conversations that you have. Just getting you really prepared so that you're building the career around the life that you want to live, right? Not by default, but the one that's by design. Yeah, so I get really passionate about it. But yeah, peakstatecoaching.com is my website. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/Carrie and Peralta. I would love to connect with you if you ever want to chat. I have like free discovery calls where we just spend some time, you and I, just talking about your career journey, where you want to be, where you're at now. And then if there's anything I can do to support you or connect you with anyone, or there's anybody in my network, I'm always happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie. I appreciate that. And I'll link everything in the show notes as well.
Wonderful.
Remember to share this with your amigas and your primas, please. Somebody out there needs to hear this conversation, and you know who it is. Thank you.